This is the METS POSTCAST, your instant game reaction for the New York Mets. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Behind a gem from David Peterson and an offensive outburst, the New York Mets have won their third consecutive game. Welcome into the Mets Postcast here, live on the Locked On Mets YouTube channel and in the Locked On Mets podcast feed. I am your Postcast host, Chris Schubert, here with you after each and every Mets game throughout the course of the season. And boy, does it feel good to be back once again talking about a Mets victory. The baton continues to get passed by this rotation, and the New York Mets have won 3 in a row, defeating the Washington Nationals by a final score of 8-1. And let's hop right into it because it was a gem from David Peterson. It was a bounce back performance from Petey, and that is where we will start tonight's postcast.
This is what you'll be talking about.
8 innings of 1-run ball from David Peterson. And his last time out against the Cleveland Guardians, it was a bit of a struggle. It was 6 innings, allowed 4 runs, a pair of home runs early, dug the Mets a hole, and they almost got no hit in that start. And Petey went out there and in this last appearance just looked really solid tonight. Just absolutely electric. And excuse me, the Brave start was his last time out, the 3 1/3 where he gave up the 6 runs and the 5 hits. So it had been 2 starts in a row for Petey where he had been struggling. And tonight he had that bounce back performance, and it was bread and butter David Peterson. It was ground balls. It was fastballs away to lefties. It was pitching to contact. It was filling up the strike zone. It was everything that we had seen from David Peterson all of last year and what we have seen from him a majority of this year. I mean, this has been the workhorse. This has been the lead dog of this rotation. The broadcast mentioned it, and they showed the stats all throughout the game that Petey's the only guy that has gone this deep into games. He's the guy since June 8th, the only guy that's gone 6 innings, and he's done it, 9 times since that marker. He has been the guy that consistently has shown up for this team when they have needed it, and those last 2 starts were bumps in the road that, probably made you a little bit concerned in the grand scheme of the entire Mets rotation kind of falling apart in front of our eyes. And David Peterson is supposed to be the guy that gets it back on track. He's supposed to be the stopgap in many regards. In his last 2 starts against the Braves and against the Guardians, he hadn't been that guy. Well, tonight he was. He was dominant, struck out 10, again, filled up the strike zone, got those ground balls. It was just a peak bread and butter start for David Peterson, and the Mets this is what they needed. And now you can feel the momentum rolling here a little bit, can't you? You can feel that Nolan McNeil's start on Saturday, and I don't want to put it all on this kid, but that start on Saturday, him dominating the way that he did, throwing up the zeros, giving the Mets some quality out of that rotation, and then he passed the baton to Clay Holmes for the Little League Classic, and Clay Holmes gave you the ceiling of what Clay Holmes can be this year, 5 innings of 1-run ball, and the baton got passed to tonight for David Peterson, and he took the baton, and he gave the Mets what you expect from him. A guy that can go deep into the game, save your bullpen, and set things up for Carlos Mendoza and the New York Mets in the rest of this series, and he did exactly that. So tomorrow, it's Kodai Senga's turn, who was pretty solid his last time out. So it's his turn to carry the baton and carry the momentum and just continue to hand it off, because the Mets, tonight, starting 16 games in a row, this team needs quality. They're not going to have a lot of wiggle room with their bullpen. They cannot overtax this pen here during this stretch. They're going to need a 6th starter during this little run here on Monday. So a lot that the Mets need to calculate and think ahead here. And a night like tonight, where you only have to use one bullpen arm in Ryan Stanek, that's going to help Carlos Mendoza the rest of this Washington series and into the weekend. So a tip of the cap to David Peterson. 10 strikeouts, just filling up the strike zone, having command of everything. Only had the 1 walk, and it was in the 8th inning. For the first 7 innings of this game, it was just a confident David Peterson, and a much-needed sight to see for him, because in the past we've seen him, when these outings kind of go sideways on him, he can kind of get in his own head, and it can snowball. And you've had 2 starts in a row where that was the case, and you're worried that he's not going to be able to get things back on track. That is exactly what he did tonight, and he did it in a big way as the Mets pick up their 67th victory of the season. We'll talk about the Mets offense. Mark Vientos, we questioned it on Sunday. Perhaps we need to remove the question mark and say that Swaggy V is back. Brett Baty had a nice day. The offense hit 4 home runs in this contest. We'll talk about the turning point, which I thought came pretty early in this game, and a bunch of stuff to keep an eye on, including something that happened down in Syracuse today that we'll need to talk about here as well. And your thoughts always welcomed here on the Mets Postcast. We'll get to all of it here on the other side. Clear the calendars, ladies and gentlemen. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for those bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or you're ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Take that flyer on the MVP race, parlay those division winner dark horses, perhaps Jets, Giants, a little New York, New Jersey division parlay. You can cook that up August 26th for FanDuel Futures Day. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. This episode brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up, and college football isn't far behind. Week 0, just around the corner. Whether you've got your eye on big-name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, PrizePicks makes it easy to get in the game. PrizePicks, simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. This is simple. PrizePicks, you can get your lineup in before your coffee finishes brewing. And then they've got the flex play option, a total game changer. Even when one of your picks doesn't hit, you still double your money. PrizePicks puts their members first. Withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, run your game. Back here on the Mets Postcast, the Locked On Mets YouTube channel, the Locked On Mets podcast feed. Chris Schubert with you, recapping an 8-1 win for the New York Mets, their 3rd win in a row. And it's nice on a night like this where you don't have to worry about checking the scoreboard. Now you can look at the scoreboard and it's just a bonus. It's the cherry on top if the Phillies lose to Seattle. It's the cherry on top if the Reds drop a game. You win, you take care of business. Nobody can gain ground on you. You can gain ground on them or extend your lead in the case of the Mets and the Reds. So what a nice feeling. And the Mets have had a bunch of it here over the last couple of days, a 3-game winning streak. I mean, that win on Sunday, their first time back-to-back win since July 27th. So it has been a bit since the Mets have won 3 games in a row. Feeling really good. Offense, huge tonight for the New York Mets, scoring 8 runs. They got started early. It was Brandon Nimmo in that 3rd inning, getting the Mets on the board 1-0. And I'll tell you, we'll get to it right now. That 3rd inning also had what I thought was the turning point in this contest.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
That Jeff McNeil double in the 3rd to push it to a 3-0 lead. Believe that hit came with 2 outs in the 3rd inning. And at that point in the game, Petey had been pitching really well, but I think many of us are still, skeptical. We come into these contests, counting the outs, knowing that the Mets may need to turn to their bullpen with their starting pitching being a little up in the air. And so you want this offense to continue to march, continue to put up runs, and give that breathing room. And so to have that double in the 3rd inning to give the Mets a little bit of a cushion there, 3-0. And then Vientos blew the doors wide open with his home run, pulling that ball to make it 5-0. Brett Baty added a home run in the 6th, make it 6-0. Soto in the 7th to make it 7-0. And then Jeff McNeil back around again for a home run in the 9th. The Mets hit 4 home runs in this game, went 3 for 9 with runners in scoring position, 7 men left on base. A nice night at the office in that regard, hitting with runners in scoring position, the power for this team. And Mark Vientos, for the 2nd straight game, hitting a home run. And it was an opposite field shot on Sunday. And we said that kind of shows that he may be getting back to being comfortable in the box, comfortable taking the ball the other way, not trying to do too much. Well, tonight it was a pull, and it was a pull, I think, clocking in at 106 miles an hour, the hardest he's pulled the ball all season. And those are the types of indicators that you look for to signal that he's feeling it. Because if he's pulling the ball, he's barreling it up, he's hitting the ball that hard, Those are the signs of a confident, swaggy Mark Vientos. And the Mets need it with Francisco Alvarez. And this could be one of the things to keep an eye on with Francisco Alvarez going on the injured list and it being a real question mark whether or not he's going to be able to return to this club for this season. The Mets need somebody else to step up and join that Fab Four and being able to produce. It was a nice night for Jeff McNeil. He's somebody that you could consider doing that. Mark Vientos starting to get hot here. And Brett Baty also hitting very well in August. And Brett Baty and Mark Vientos, put them in the lineup every day. We play the Sharpie pen pencil game here. Put them both in pen. Perhaps put them both in Sharpie. I mean, these guys should be playing every day right now. It comes at the expense of Starling Marte and Ronnie Mauricio, but I think that's just the reality of the situation right now. And this is the perk of what David Stearns wants to do. David Stearns likes the competition. He likes leaving these positions wide open for somebody to just grab the bull by the horns and run with it. Well, the con of that is if everybody's cold at the same time, it can look like what it did for the last couple of weeks for this offense. But when Baty's hitting the way that he's hitting and Vientos is hitting the way that he's hitting, this is where you see why they want to do this, because they want that opportunity for when somebody gets hot, the position can just be theirs and they can roll with it. And if Mark Vientos is going to play like this the rest of the way, the Mets may have that extra bat that they need in this lineup to replace what they're losing in Francisco Alvarez. And Brett Baty has been doing a great job. Let's check in on what Brett Baty's August numbers are. And I don't know if the game logs that I'm looking at here will include tonight's performance. So we'll say potentially including tonight, but I don't think it is. He has 2 home runs this month. Again, it would be 3 including tonight, but hitting .345 with a .406 on base percentage and a .552 slugging, a .959 OPS in the 29 at bats here. Again, I'd have to check the math to see if that includes tonight. Even if it doesn't, what a great August. And he continued it tonight, hitting another home run, 14 home runs this season for Brett Baty. So those two guys, they have those spots. And I think for the time being, Vientos can be in there at DH or third base. And Brett Baty should be in there as well. And with McNeil playing second, and it just feels like Baty at third base, Vientos at DH, and that's the lineup that you're going to roll out here for the majority of the rest of the season. The stuff to keep an eye on, we mentioned it, Francisco Alvarez going down with the injury. And I'll just share my thoughts on this now. I do worry a little bit about this idea of seeing how he feels over the next 10 to 14 days in terms of pain tolerance and getting him a rehab assignment and then having him contribute, because he had been hitting the ball so well since coming back from the minors. I would hate for them to have him in the lineup and him try to press things, and because of the injury, him struggle and him lose his confidence. I would rather save his confidence and have him go out with what he did coming back from the minors than maybe run a major risk of him losing his confidence. But that's what the next 10 to 14 days will be about for the Mets. And Luis Torrens had some hard hit balls tonight, put one in the gap for a double. He has shown at times the ability to hit the ball pretty well. And defensively, we know what he's able to offer. So it feels like the Mets could get at least a little bit of production from Luis Torrens here in that spot. They called up Kodai Senga to be the backup catcher, and so they'll roll with that here for the time being. James got in before the show started with the breakdown of Brandon Sproat tonight. Was on regular rest for the first time and went 6 innings, 2 hits, 1 earned, had 8 strikeouts, 83 pitches, struck out 6 over the first 2 innings. And again, that sets him up to be that 6th starter potentially on Monday. I tend to think that they're going to go with an opener. Potentially Huascar Brazoban gets called up for that spot and they use Reed Garrett's option, or they use Frankie Montas as a starter. I think they may save Brandon Sproat for September 1st when rosters expand and they get that extra spot in the pitching staff and in the lineup, or on the bench, I should say, where they get to add 1 hitter and 1 pitcher. But as Ryan pointed out on Twitter earlier today, the Mets have done this with the last 2 starters that they've called up. They're big prospects. They did it with Christian Scott, his last start before getting called up. They set him up to be on regular rest. And then they did the same thing with Nolan McNeil and then called him up right away for that start that he had on Saturday. And so Sproat, for the first time this season, is doing the same thing. So Ryan, shout out to him, credit to him. He had the alarm bells out and ready to go and noticing that. So it's certainly more of a possibility than maybe I thought it was a couple of days ago. And boy, it would be pretty fun. I'll be a little selfish. Monday happens to be my birthday. And so if Brandon Sproat does make that start, nice way to celebrate the birthday, being able to watch another one of these Mets pitching prospects toe the rubber, and pitch for the New York Mets. I think I'd much rather that than Frankie Montas or an opener there on Monday in that one. But the Mets, they are starting to roll. And we've mentioned the snowball maybe rolling down the hill. Boy, does it really start to feel like that. Definitely feels like the Mets are gaining some momentum. They're gaining some confidence. The bats are there. I mean, Francisco Lindor looks like the toe is healthy. He looks like he is just back to being the guy he was in the first part of the season. And the toe was really bothering him for those 2 months that he was just trying to play through it. And he's back. Soto with another home run. Just at the top of this lineup is just getting hot. Vientos is getting there. Baty's having a good month. The puzzle pieces are all starting to fit together for this team. And more importantly, the starting pitching is back to being at least a little bit more reliable than it was a few weeks ago, or even at the beginning of last week, we should say. So it is Kodai Senga going tomorrow for the New York Mets. He'll get the baton from David Peterson. He'll look to keep the good times rolling. He'll look to extend the Mets winning streak to 4. He'll look to pick up the series win for New York. And let's watch some scoreboards. Let's see what's going on in Philadelphia with the Mariners. Let's keep an eye on what Cincinnati is doing here. And if the Mets continue to win, there is an opportunity here to draw back into this division and to grow themselves a lead over the Cincinnati Reds for that third and final wild card spot. Appreciate you joining us here on the Mets Postcast. If you are new, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us on the Locked On Mets YouTube channel. Hit that notification bell. You're notified when we go live for these Mets Postcasts the moment the Mets are done. For those of you listening to us in the podcast feed, appreciate you making us your first listen and enjoying the Mets Postcasts after these games conclude. We're back again tomorrow after Kodai Senga takes the mound for the Mets. Hopefully this offense can keep on rolling. It's 3 in a row for New York. It's a good night. It's a good night for the offense. It was a good night for David Peterson. And hey, Ryan Stanek had a good outing in Washington. It's been a struggle for him the last time he was there. So it was a scoreless inning for Ryan Stanek. So listen, we'll take all the small wins we can get along with the big wins. The big wins tonight, the Mets win, David Peterson dominant, Mets offense looking great, and another win for New York. We're back again tomorrow to break down game 2 of this series. Have a good one, Mets fans.